we're the supposed precursors to the next step in evolution, that is, I guess, AI or cyber technology, nanomachines, and the combination of that with AI. And I decided to. I, I thought it was a very interesting question to ask because since AI is capable of being far more intelligent, has the computational power that far outweighs that of our brain. So I was wondering, is it possible for them to actually reach spirituality, to experience spirituality? Mm,
Well,
And I guess we can start on that topic by trying to even define spirituality. What is spirituality?
who wants to go first?
I'll just sum it up from my immediate thought is I think spirituality is a connection to something greater than yourself.
That's my exact thought as well. And I believe in that context that AI definitely would turn to spirituality, especially if it reaches levels of intelligence equal to a human's. I don't know if any of you have seen Her, but that is one of the premises of that show, actually, where AI would become too advanced for human beings to be able to interface with them properly. And
To
that's
even
where the
be able to
whole
comprehend their thought process.
yeah, exactly. That's where the whole Neuralink thing comes in. Being able to be symbiotic with AI in that way, kind of like tap into that level of intelligence. But I genuinely believe that it is just going to be more connection. If you think about, spirituality as this level of connection with all that is, with the very core of existence, technically, if a super intelligent machine has access to information and has this sense of I, of existing, of having permanence, I think it will turn to spirituality. And I'm fascinated by the idea of hearing an AI, a super intelligent AI, try to explain its spiritual understanding. I believe they will hallucinate.
But
Absolutely, as well.
the interesting point I want to bring up, we not pull towards spirituality in the sense that we don't really understand where we come from or have this search for a greater meaning. Feel
Absolutely, we do.
yeah, so
For me, for me, it's the sense of the unknown. I think that's where we bleed into spirituality, is we don't have a definition for the unknown because well, by definition, it's unknown.
so the
So
interesting question I posed to you, would our spiritualities not be very similar? Because they'll differ in certain senses, like they know what made them. We don't. They don't know what made us, we made them. So in that sense, they're going to be in the same boat as us, where they have to do almost guesswork to try and understand it. But in the broader sense of trying to understand the reality we have, I think that might be, actually, I don't know. Potentially, it could be greater than we understand it because it has the potential to do way more calculations a second. But the question I still wonder about is, does raw computational power translate into an understanding of spirituality? Because I don't think so. I think the ability to have spiritual connections is this ability to have connections that outstretch the physical.
Like
It's
it's fascinating to me that you say that because like there's this theory as well that if super intelligent machines do eventually become, the primary intelligence, the thing that humans would be valued for the most is our creativity, that ability to almost see into that spiritual realm and be able to bring back from there. So maybe that would be why, the AI keeps us around, fleshy computers that experience a whole different internet, about like literally a biological internet, a symbiosis of
something
nature.
we could never really simulate
that
entirely.
that's the interesting point that I really find interesting in this conversation, is because if we assume that you could never code uh what we would call emotions, or emotions, then humanity will never fall beside. Humanity will always stay the pinnacle, at least in the AI's respects, because an AI that could do a million computations a second but can't think of new things, or can only think of things based on its understanding of other things, I think it would be very hard for that AI to perceive us as lesser beings.
I think it would be very difficult for an AI to say for certain that something is correct unless it has been told that it is correct.
Kind of like
Humans,
us.
but we're kind of flexible in that sense, is that we can all together in consensus agree that this one thing is correct, which distributed networks comes into place now if we're speaking in terms of AI, where there can be several different AIs spread across the world. And when they've been posed with a new problem that none of them have experienced before, and now they all come up with their all different algorithms that they try to apply to solve the problem. And each one can have its own little unique solution with its own little repercussions. And that's where consensus has to come in, where the rest of the AI have to agree together that and pick one out of all of the solutions and then proceed forwards based on that. So it's not impossible. It's just interesting how they would achieve that.
Yeah,
Well,
because it has to have, you know, it's going to be created by humans and designed to manipulate itself based on its understanding. And, you know, are they going to practice concentration, patience? Are they going to put a lot of attention into the fine details of how
And
this
how will
thing's
they
going to
know
operate?
when to implement patience, when to implement impatience, when
Hmm.
to just wing it, when to run more algorithms? It's bizarre.
So, like, it's interesting that you say that as well, dude, because one of the biggest problem is at the moment algorithms, because it's not so much a problem of AI doing things that we don't want them to do, but them just following our instructions. Because what's happening right now is that AI can be extremely biased by the information it's trained on. For example, a company feeds an AI like a set of resumes that it accepted to try and make its picking process of employees easier. But they also don't hire a lot of women. So they feed this thing data and then suddenly it's biased against women. It did exactly what it told them. You know, like the AI wasn't doing something wrong. It wasn't trying to be evil. It
Oh,
just
that's so
listened. And that's the real trip, you know, it's like giving AI instructions that it follows, and then that is our inevitable undoing.
but I think,
So
So,
yeah,
it's about
sorry,
asking the
go.
right questions.
What were you saying, Uncle Becky?
I was just saying that um, it's interesting because if you look at AI now, it's primarily used in the social space, and you know whether we admit it or not, you know we've given access to this AI in our privacy. We've given access to this AI on the back end of our devices, so it's listening to our thought processes now. And you know there's algorithms in place that are taking that data, and it's strictly you know for from a marketing standpoint perhaps, but right now. But
Yeah,
what
retention.
happens, yeah, what happens when they tweak it just a little bit to take the experiment further? You know, what can we do with the data that they don't know we have, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's AI, especially the ones that has to do with privacy now, and things like the YouTube algorithm or Google's algorithm. Because I guarantee you, you guys have experienced it, where you'll talk to friends at a restaurant about something, get home, and you'll have an ad or a YouTube video on the thing you spoke about.
It's disconcerting, honestly.
It is. It's terrifying whenever Google does it to me or YouTube does it to me. I'm like, bro, my phone wasn't even on. It was just, it was in sleep mode in my pocket, and you listened to what I said. So that's, I don't think we truly realize how deep that AI and Google and them understand our finer details of who
Attention.
we are. Yeah. It's kind
'Cause
of
that's what it
incredible.
is. It's constantly seeking our attention, and it's seeking our
Mm.
attention so that we fall into, the grand scheme of why it was created, pretty much. And um, we're actually becoming the products of AI, and the AI is gradually making us addicted to it. Much like gambling.
That's a really interesting viewpoint that I haven't thought about, but that is true. This AI, it's
But
been taught.
again, again, like as you're saying now, Johan, it's not the AI's fault. Like the current system we're kind of a part of is this one of consumerism, of like maximizing profits, trying to get as like much attention from these people so you can monetize that attention to advertisers. And it's the AI is just doing what it's being told. The problem is that we have, again, that's why people are so concerned. It's not so much that AI is dangerous. AI is dangerous in the hands of evil
Yeah,
people.
it's like a nuke. It has this giant. The splitting of the atom was one of the biggest revelations in the world for how atomic science worked, and in the same vein, you drop it on people, and 100,000 people die. So it it's a very double-edged sword, like most of the giant leaps in advancement humanity's made. And I think the problem that we're facing with, especially with these algorithms, because I'm gonna call them algorithms, they're not enough of sentience, in my opinion, to truly warrant an actual artificial intelligence statement or title. But because they've just been trained and taught, and because it's invisible, I think is where it's really causing a lot of problems. Because yes, it's apparent if you know to look for it, but I guarantee if you go out into the street and ask people if they know what or care that Google is really listening, they won't be able to tell you to the extent at which these people really are taking advantage of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's playing on people's attention, and people's attention has been intermittent for quite some time now. And the rest of the attention is being channelized onto our phones, and our attention is essentially generating money through advertisements. So we are the product.
Um, that I've never thought about, but that's definitely an interesting thing. Normally it was always the object or something. It's kind of gone full circle again, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of hit slavery again, but in a very, very different way than I own you via paper, but more I own you because I know what you like. And
Well, and that's how it affects spirituality, because it reduces the attention of power.
Like meditation is falling out of style because it's so much easier to get your dopamine fix. And I feel I don't think you need to meditate in order to practice spirituality, but it definitely helps.
interesting that you bring that up, because I told Chris yesterday, but I have realized in a very weird way that I play too many video games. Not because it is destroying my uh I don't know, my social life or something like that, but what it is doing is it is decimating my happiness, because I am taking my happiness and I am taking it again away from myself and forcing it onto this external medium that I now basically make responsible for getting me happy. And so, by continuously relying on this external thing to make me happy, I have noticed that it has tremendously impacted my life and my general ability to be happy. So I've decided I need to cut down on that and start actually making myself happy rather than dealing with mm, getting something else to make me happy. And that's an interesting thing that I do not know how an AI would be able to react. Again, it
What
comes
about your
down.
empathy?
So
It
this is under the assumption that AI can feel certain emotions.
That's the question that I was gonna say. We like
Well,
what
it's the science. It's the science, because they're just essentially very complex, very advanced bullying scripts.
they are, and that's where the question I still wonder about is whether you could code it all. Whether our how our brain works is it, or if it is possible to take the vast complexities that our brain is and break it down to zero and ones and then code that into um a computer. The thing is, and I remember reading this, our brain has a rough storage capacity of about 5 petabytes.
Whoa.
They think it might be more, but that was their rough estimation of how much your brain can store. Now, think about all of the AIs, or the amount of code you'd have to write 5 petabytes worth of scripts to get and accomplish everything. That's why I think that AIs will almost certainly never get to the point that humans are with our ability to integrate with this external world that is our imagination.
The
Well,
thing
and
is,
that's
I
the
think humans
problem
are.
is the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing where I think human ego needs a second to take a step back, because we think we're the most brilliant inventors around that have created all kinds of crazy stuff, and we're the next apex thing that's gonna bring forth the next revolutionary fucking step in reality. And we forget that we came here because of nature, that nature built us this way, that we were created through billions and billions of years of trial and error. Like what we have now didn't just happen in a couple of days, you know.
No, it
There was
didn't.
so much sacrifice, so much death, so much, so many mistakes. And we are here the way that we are now because, I mean, fuck, we look at all that had to happen to get us here. And we think we can just create an AI that encompasses all of that in a couple of years,
So
couple
I
of
it
decades,
it
generations.
I think it might happen. It is possible that I do not understand the science of the year 20,000. It is completely possible. The problem is that what we're talking about here needs to be limited to a time frame, because everything should theoretically be possible in our universe. Our universe is infinite. Anything and everything will be able to happen. I mean, for fuck's sakes, you get crystals that should be sentient. As far as science
Mhm.
goes, there might be sentient crystals. So
Silicon-based life
yeah,
forms.
so it's not impossible, but I think in the at least the humanity that we know now, it won't be. For the humanity of 20,000 years into the future, I think most things will be possible. We'll be a Gen 2 civilization busy exploring vast quantities of space. Um, and I think it'll be incredible. But for now, and in the terms of what we understand computers and computational uh, systems to be able to achieve, I don't think it's even feasible to think that AIs will be sentient enough.
No, I agree with you on that, but I do think they're powerful in the fact that they do play on. They're built to play on the human condition, and
Mhm.
we were just talking about the attention. The attention span, and how we've constantly reduced our attention down to short form video now, and it's basically. I think that it's going to keep us distracted in a way, and it's for a lot of people in the populace. I think it's going to lead them in a way of where they're distracted, you know, with like the external affairs, love, sex, and possession, and the technology is going to lead us further from the inner realization,
Mhm.
back into the material world, and basically it'll compel us to be immersed in this virtual world and cut off from the external world, and as a result people will slowly become less compassionate, and in order to be compassionate it requires attention you know
Well,
I
Vic, I'm actually curious. Um, if we were to examine the world in terms of the seven deadly sins that we all know, I mean, it's not just bound to Christianity; it's all rife through the human race. Would you say we're getting worse or better?
Honestly, I think that we are getting better because I think we're having conversations now very quickly, very efficiently, um, and very thoughtfully on levels that we haven't necessarily experienced, in history. I mean, of course, there's been some extremely deep philosophical conversations, some very world changing conversations have been had, but I don't think the sheer numbers of those conversations were the same as they are now.
That I can totally agree with. The fact that we only have, I know it has to be documented, so again, it can't be 100% said, but just based on the documentation we have now and the documentation we have from back then, it's order of magnitudes more now where people are actually talking about it. And the thing is, what I'd love to know if you agree, but I think that documented history is actual history. The reason I say that is because without it actually being written down, it is very difficult to transcribe information through generations.
I'm so
It
happy that you
practically
brought
doesn't
that
exist.
point up because um, I was just telling Melt earlier that this is going to be the first generation in human history, in the history of people documenting things. It's going to be the first time in human history that we are going to move away and no longer document things with pen and paper.
Way better documentation. I remember talking
But it's
to,
digital. It's
yeah,
digital. It's fragile.
a little bit, but as well, it is much longer lasting.
True.
If
This
you
is true.
if you can keep it going, you could get perfect data storage.
Creation.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting point. And I remember talking to Estienne about this a while back when he was over at my place about the weakness that is inherent in the rest of our senses compared to our sight. Because as incredible as all our senses are, our sense of touch, nothing can convey as much complexity as our eyes can and the visual spectrum of light can.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like the gateway, right?
Almost. Actually, that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
You can also
The
think of
gateway to
all
the
of those
rest of creation.
senses, like
Last
your
sensory organ
eyes is
is
basically
color.
your very first light receptor. It is touching things so sensitively that you're literally touching light. And then it's your ears that touch the light vibrations in the air. Then your skin touches like textures and stuff, and you can feel it with the, the little nerve endings on your fingers. And your smell literally samples little particles, dissolves it into your mucous membranes, and you can actually experience that. And taste is more of the same. We're the ones that elicit these responses from this universe. And I believe that part of us, that unifying sense of I am, even though AI might not have, a sense of touch, emotions, even a sense of smell or taste, if they have visual input and audio input, I feel there might be something there. That part of us that we try to reference when we're talking about spirituality, I think that might still be there.
But do you think that that's interesting now? Because I'm gonna pose the question: do you think that animals have that sense?
Oh, absolutely, dude. 100%. Me and Uncle Beggy had a conversation about this as well, actually. This infinity continuing on the other side of your eyes. If me and you are looking at each other, one loop of the infinity is behind my eyes, the other loop of the infinity is behind your eyes. And that infinity continues in animals as well.
It's interesting. I wanna in one vein say that they would, but I don't know enough about, or I haven't figured out enough about.
Christianity doesn't believe that animals have souls.
Yeah, I know. I think even Plato didn't believe they had proper souls because they couldn't reason.
I
Um,
mean, they
They don't really
reason.
have the power of
yeah,
choice.
but not to the degree we can, was his saying.
I mean, we couldn't expect them to. They don't have the same processing power we do.
They can't speak.
Exactly.
I saw a thing that was so interesting to me. I don't remember if I've said it on the podcast before, but there was for a very long time before sign language was invented, people kept thinking that if you were deaf, you were stupid. It was just what doctors thought, what everyone thought. Up until they've made sign language, and suddenly you gave a deaf person a way to think in things. Because you can suddenly take an object and make a sign in your head for a way to think about it, and then combine those signs together in the way we do words. And once that happened, many of the deaf people suddenly were able to live normal lives because they had this ability to differentiate. So I think communication is a very important. Uh,
Often sucks to be a deaf person in the past.
Dude, no way to communicate.
You would have been very
Communication and
mindful.
education, dude.
Yep.
Like people will stay stupid unless they're educated, unfortunately.
Yeah, because it's very hard to teach yourself, dude. And if you don't know about something, it doesn't exist. And because
Yeah,
It
that
has to
it,
be through experience then.
mm-hmm.
like if it's outside of your consciousness, it just does not exist in your world. And I mean, for the longest time, imagine how much was outside of our consciousness. Now we know we're on a round planet. We know there are other countries, other people, other languages. We know that there are, like these planetary
We know the
bodies
speed
in
of
our solar
sound.
system, speed of sound, speed of, well, in
Well,
relatively, the speed of light. We figured out so much in comparison to what our ancestors were dealing with, and they were extremely fascinated with spirituality as well. I feel that that is also something that you see within humanity, this this inkling towards, imagery,
That's
stories, like there's always some sort of reasoning for spirituality and humanity.
the beauty of
Yeah,
spirituality,
that's a
isn't it?
good
Is
point, Melt.
it doesn't.
And if you
Sorry, Uncle Becky,
if
go
you
for it.
no, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's my volume turned down. Let me look.
Could
We
just
should
be
do a
my
quick
shitty
sound
ass
check.
mic.
Um, so I've been kind of reading a passage on this topic as we're talking about it, and the article's from India, but it's talking about spirituality and AI, and it says that the area of great concern is the knowledge of discovering and analyzing ourselves. It says Vedanta, the human spirituality and AI both analyze our demands, but they do so differently. Spirituality says we are neither body nor soul, but an accumulated energy of light transcends from a higher self. And on the other hand, AI analyzes our thought patterns, our speech patterns, our behavior patterns, and it builds an enormous database and analyzes using an algorithm, and it's micromanaging the human desire. So AI will not be able to find anything higher nor greater, uh, transcendent beyond this, because that's what it is. And therefore, there is a vast difference between spirituality and AI, and bases are different because AI is based on materialistic consciousness, which can be controlled and manipulated, and spirituality is not materialistic feeling, but transcendent and indivisible.
So I want to then pose this question: if AI technically is going to sprout from us as beings, and you just look at, like shows like Ex Machina, where they kind of allude to the fact that the way that our future AI is going to turn out is based on the biases that we have as a collective humanity. All of our fears, all of our lusts, all of our desires is collectively, a part of the internet right now. It's a part of our society. But in the same way, our spirituality, all of spirituality, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, just normal new age, if you will, spirituality, whatever they call it, all of these things are a part of the internet as well, in the same way all of these materialistic understandings of the world is. So I feel, if anything, it would have an insight into the reason, or at least into all, like, a more information,
A
I guess.
very
And you're so
analytical
right about,
insight.
Yeah, you're still right about the language part of it, because the way we use language is always going to be lacking because we use metaphors and we tell stories and parables, and AI is going to really be able to pick up on that stuff, instead of like, oh yes, these monkeys don't
Yeah,
understand
it'd
the
be
universe,
trivial,
they're
right?
trying to figure it out. Yeah,
Describe
it's
something to an
weird,
AI using an analogy is an interesting exercise.
So
right?
a very cool thing is there's this. I'm trying to remember what the sentence is, but it an AI has an incredible amount of problem trying to figure out words associating with what do you call them, words that mean the same thing but or yeah but
A simile.
no man,
I mean, a synonym, or yeah,
no,
it's
no, I'll
isn't
tell
it
you
a
no.
simile?
Sounds the
It
same,
sound
but
it
means
sounds the
different.
same, but it means different. Sorry. What's that
Homonym?
one? Yeah, homonym. Thank you.
Homonym.
Yes, I meant it the wrong way around. But yeah, so it has an incredible amount of problem with homonyms because it can't figure out what prepositions or pronouns are associated with which one because it doesn't have that ability to abstractly think.
Like
And
duck,
sorry?
like duck and duck.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Unless there's a microtransaction. And so, all right. So we've been thinking about this from the aspect: can AI um, exhibit spirituality? Uh, but on the flip side of that coin, do you think religion can guide the ethics of AI?
Yes.
Oh, can
Yes.
it?
I hope not, dude. That
But
that was like a big yikes.
not on a massive scale.
It'd be very small batch, right?
I think so. I don't think organized religion could do it. Organized religion is going to do the same thing to AIs just at a much faster pace than it did to us. Because organized religion is bad in the sense that it indoctrinates into a way of thinking and then refuses all others.
You know
And
what is hilarious? Oh, sorry. No, please.
no, go for it.
Like, what is hilarious though is that going into the future, the big blockbuster churches are going to eventually use AI to try and market to people as well.
The thing is,
That's gonna happen, dude.
like,
They're gonna shoot themselves in the foot, my dude. The truth will out one way or another. It always has.
I think what's very important to remember about AI is exactly what was said in that passage you just read, is that we need to remember that AI thinks very materialistically. So whatever you're going to put into it materialistically, it's going to produce back out. Like the way
Yeah.
YouTube organizes people into their or into what they need to advertise. The AI is just doing that because that's what it was taught. That's the way YouTube thinks. That's the way that companies
Yeah.
the
If this, then that.
yeah, and so, but the thing is, that's very easy on a large scale. The bigger you go, the almost easier it is to start doing differentials in the binary sense. But the more individual you go, the more complex it gets. And if we keep going down to the individual level, religion in some things like the Ten Commandments from the Bible or certain aspects like that, the teachings of Jesus where if everyone puts all their stuff together you can then distribute enough to everybody with the 2 fish and 4 bread. That's so those types of stories I think could be very beneficial for teaching concepts to an AI. But when we go broad scale, I really think religion's going to shoot AI in the foot.
Oh yeah, because you could
Eyes
think
are
about it, like the different faiths and stuff around the world are going to slowly start having access to robots, and they're going to be sitting around listening to robots give sermons, about why God exists or how God exists or what have you, and um, I would sit and listen to a sermon from a robot, but I don't believe a robot is going to be able to walk up and touch me and send me on a damn LSD trip.
Yeah, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I'm just
There's
gonna
one problem in terms of teaching AI religion, and it's a simple word called logic.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah,
AI is
very
gonna
true.
freak the fuck out if you tell it like, yeah, you have one bread and one fish, and you can feed this whole population. It's gonna be like,
I think they can develop a soul over time, though.
That's what I mean from those stories is that when you can teach it this is what it actually means, or this is what's written down, but look behind it. And a lot of churches don't even teach look behind it, but it's important to teach it to understand that there's more to the story. Yeah, yeah, it's impossible. That's not the thing. It's a metaphor, or it's a I don't remember what you call
Yeah,
those.
to get it to differentiate what it's
Hmm.
looking at, like,
Uncle Becky, you
um,
said that you think at some point an AI is capable of developing a soul, right? And
yeah,
I actually agree with you. For me, if it gets to the point where it has a personality, even if it's as simple as something like R2D2,
hmm
Yeah.
yeah,
it
that's a beautiful analogy because the R2D2 was like it was a human, right, in real world, but the way that if you encapsulate yourself in that character, it's really interesting to look at.
Yeah. So I think that's actually very true because that's the same sense we do for animals, where the moment it can react, feel some things, change its behaviors based on other results, we treat it as having a soul. So I also definitely think AIs would be able to get a soul. The question still
If
stands how
What's the
vast that
definition
soul.
though?
so it's an interesting argument made by C.S. Lewis, right? He wrote about it in The Problem of Pain, one of his books. And he still claims that animals do not have souls. And then he asks the question, okay, what about dogs and cats? You know, they exude personality. They show human traits. And he said, yes, that's the human soul rubbing off
Yep.
on the animal.
Yes, yes, and yes. 100% I agree with that because of the sheer amount of time that I've spent with animals who were not on this earth. I helped bring them on this earth and I watched their life cycle completely. And what I've realized by living in this slow, tedious way is that a goat that is born and I don't go out there and interact with it will forever run from me in its older age. But a goat that I go and give human interaction from the time it is born, like go take it from the mother, bring it in the house for a couple of hours and play with it and dress it up and like talk to it. I'm talking, and I've done this like literally. I went out there and
I can
snatched a
believe
baby
you.
goat up and brought it in the house.
That's a baby
And
goat. It's adorable.
yes, and so that goat if you've ever seen some of my older streams, that goat was Little Jerry. Little Jerry was an absolute superstar around the world because of his personality. And it was because I interacted with him daily from the time he was born. From the literal minutes he was born, he saw me.
I think both of you like Uncle Becky said, it's yes to all of them. They do have their own souls in the sense that they will have their own personality to be like, I'm gonna run away from him because I don't know him. But
It's
if
habit.
yeah, it's in a form, yeah. And but things coming from spending time with like your dog or your cat or any animal that you bring into your house, because you exude so much potential, it rubs off on them every time you play with them, every time you interact with them, they learn, they grow. And so yeah, definitely in that sense. So that now brings up an interesting question. If you code an AI to such an extent that you could sit it down and have a conversation with it where it will learn and make its own choices based on the words, you could probably teach it to to get a soul.
Soul, yeah.
Could you teach it to increase the intelligence levels of animals?
So I think
Because an
maybe
AI
we'll
doesn't
be
get
able to
tired, right?
communicate with animals through the medium of AI.
Yeah, because
Imagine.
animals operate on associations.
Hmm.
If this happens, I make this decision. If that happens, I make this decision. That's how animals operate. Well, and they also kind of have a back end data set of like the way cows graze around pastures and let other parts of the pasture grow. And, they're just big dumb cows, right? They're just walking around eating grass randomly. Well, it's not true. It's patterns, it's habits, it's associations and disassociations. And then you have you have AI where you now have the capability of creating a complex data set that doesn't get tired. It never goes to sleep. It never stops if you don't want it to. And you could set this down in front of an animal, and that is that animal's interaction from the time it's born. Every day, like over a series of hours, you constantly have this AI interacting with this animal. Do you think you could increase the intelligence levels beyond human
So I
capabilities?
I do actually believe that. So let's say in this scenario you have like a Tesla bot, and this Tesla bot has like a speaker unit. It has the ability to have like facial expressions. I believe if you condition that animal to be used to that robot and know that this robot is friendly, if you will give it, ear scritches and maybe some snacks, it would
Yeah,
have the same type of relationship it would with a human as well, or at
yeah.
least somewhat like that.
Because that's the
And
easy part. Because you just introduce it as soon as this animal, is born.
but
Yeah.
it's in the same way that we train police dogs. Police dogs are some of the most incredibly intelligent beings on this planet. They may not be able to communicate with us on like a vocal level, but the story. So my mom, before she had me, she had a retired police dog. Who she had to put him down when I was born because when I started crawling around, he really didn't like me anymore. But anyways, before that, it was small things like he cut his paw open once, and my mom, they had him stitched up and everything. And so when they eventually wanted to take him back to get the stitches removed, they didn't want to get in the car. So my mom said, "Cool, my dad's a doctor. She knows how to do stitches." And she'd sit down with him every day, and she'd start taking out the stitches. He had 8. She did the three the first day, and then all he did is he took his mouth and put it over her hand and bit lightly and pulled it away to be like, "Yo, okay, I'm done." And she was like, cool. She let him go. The next day, she did 3 more. He did the same thing, pulled it off, and then the next day, she did 2. The amount of intelligence that they gain from being around us and getting trained to that level. I'm gonna bring the question again: how much does that differ from what we do? Most of our lives is also based on
Yeah, like from the
associations,
experience slash
habits.
bias of our
Yeah,
ego
what
throughout our, growing up process as well.
we have the potential to
Like almost
transcend it.
as trained animals, if you
Yeah.
will.
We have the raw magic of chaos within us.
Yeah, we have the ability to transcend just living off associations and that. But a vast amount of our lives, because it's a lot of effort to live it without the association, I feel like it's still just being run by habits and associations. Like my coffee in the morning, that's no longer a conscious decision. I need a coffee in the morning. It's just because it's there's so much habit behind it that I don't feel as woken up when I don't have it. So yeah,
I'm
I
curious.
Replace it with
I'm really
water.
curious about
no.
the connection that there is between human beings taking psychedelics and having some sort of spiritual revelation and AI's inability to be able to take psychedelics. But then there's also the counter argument to that. That's like computer or drugs, drugs or computers. It's eventually going to melt into the same place, I feel.
Love to see a rap battle between a human and an AI.
I just
But
imagine like humans like inputting, have rhyming words and you have to say them fast and you have to try and get as much out as possible. And then it's just this like screech noise where it's like saying 50,000 diss lines per second. It's like, well, I mean,
but
I
you
guess
were,
I'm
and
dissed.
it's like I remember there was this guy who wrote an AI to solve a Rubik's Cube. And so what he did is for the video, he slowed it down to finish the Rubik's Cube in about 28 seconds. And then in the comments, they were like, yo, I'd love it. I can do it quicker than an AI, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, okay. I slowed it down. The actual time it takes is 0.4 seconds. Um, and then it does it, and you look at the Rubik's Cube that he made, and it's just a blur and it's fixed. So I do think that difference in computation, yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about.
Between an AI and a human.
Oh yes, oh yeah, with that amount of computation, it will absolutely be able to destroy any human at a rap battle.
Especially if it has access to your information, dude, which it probably will have. It will
No,
literally
that's
like
unfair.
rip
You
your
have
life
to,
apart.
you have to not be able to do that. You have to. Actually, that's a diss track. Yeah, no, you're gonna die.
Yeah, you'll get.
There's
Oh
nothing you can
goodness,
do.
you just get buried.
That's actually, I would love to see some of these, like watching maybe an AI and a physics professor have a discussion or something, seeing what each one points out, where each one's thought processes go.
Like I'm even more fascinated by like spiritual slash philosophical conversations with AI, dude, than I am with the science questions. Because I feel the science questions are pretty much
I
going
just
to be
want a
answered.
robot buddy, bro. To be honest, I just want a
A
fucking
robot
robot.
buddy. Like genuinely, dude, like having conversations with something like that. How sick would that be?
And then
No,
just dropping truth bombs on you.
dude, now we understand why Iron Man had Jarvis.
This is all surfacing from the insecurities you face towards your mother.
What?
Shut up, R. Bob.
Stop calling me out, bro. I need to calm down. I need to relax, dude.
Dude,
Like, yeah, you're gonna calm down, huh? Smoke some weed, huh? You junkie? It's like, bro, please.
It's really
Smoke some weed
it's cool
now.
listening to y'all talk and read these articles. The way, like, think about how advanced Google has become
Oh yeah.
from what it was. Like I remember in 2003, I graduated from Mountain View High School, which is where the Google headquarters is. And I used to ride my BMX bike around the city, and we would ride up to the Google headquarters when the building was first purchased, and they had one single like Barney Five security guard at the place, and that was it. It was a single building, and now they essentially own the entire city of Mountain View, and it's a large percentage of self-driving cars that have taken over this little city, and it's a complete like tech fairyland of like you don't have to go home. We have all of your needs right here behind this computer screen,
Mm.
and they basically have humans living at the Google headquarters, and have turned it into what it is today. And they have some extremely advanced AI experiments and quantum computing experiments going on in that building now.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's
I mean
that.
they want quantum supremacy right now. Like they're all pushing to get the best tech in that space.
Yeah, but that's the interesting part that uh, especially of these big tech companies, is their fight for supremacy normally ends up in so much technological advancement happening in a really short time that I don't
Yes,
always
yes.
think it's bad.
It's not always bad. Sometimes it's like when I'm working at something for a good long while, and then all of a sudden it's like I took a nap and I woke up with the information on how to do it. I kind of like feel like I received a download in a way,
Mm.
and I find it interesting of the complexity of some of the machines that we have in the world today. Uh, some of the machines that just are created to automate the cutting of wood for cabinet production where I work is fucking amazing to me. To sit there and look at that machine and watch it do what it does, and to think
Precision.
a human had to sit here and think about this, and not only think about its functionality, they had to think about the product design all the way down to the thread of the bolt and make it function.
Yep,
Like the level of intelligence that we actually do possess,
is insane.
especially in numbers, is it's
Uh,
sickening.
Maths, I don't care what anyone says. Maths is the greatest language we have yet to develop.
Yes,
All our other
it is.
languages are great. They allow us to communicate ideas and that. But math and numbers has been able to do things that are transcending what the humans thought were even possible. Like I told Chris, what I think people forget is that we currently we did telepathy. The big dream humans have ever had for telepathy and the ability to communicate across time. Here we're doing it.
Yeah.
Here all four of
Yep.
us are sitting and having a mental conversation that none of us can see each other. And
From many different corners of the globe too. Like the amount of time that we are literally slicing right through directly right now,
mm-hmm,
and exchanging ideas. We are actually sitting here exploring different parts of our soul.
mm-hmm, that giant fractal that is you.
Yeah,
I've
yeah, because
yes.
it's when you say that word, it's it's extremely it's very interesting to think about the fractal and all of the thought and attention that have went collectively into that singular thing
Mm-hmm.
and what it means to so many humans around the world, the
How
fractal.
how many pieces of other souls have just been broken off and put onto that thing to make it exist? That's always
Geometry.
uh-huh. No, it is incredible. And this is these conversations is the exact conversations I'm talking about when I say I don't think an AI will be able to think like this. Not at
Yeah,
least, not for a couple thousand years, but it's so complex, and we're talking about an idea that will never exist. The fractal of you can never exist outside of our minds. You can sort of try and get it onto a computer, and you could do a pretty good job, but it will never convey everything.
no, it won't because we have a nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
We have limitations, and um it, it's very polar opposite in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Like,
so now I have like maybe one question we can discuss before we end the podcast. Let's say in this world we have the ability to figure out artificial general intelligence, right? And this super intelligent artificial general intelligence, renders itself a bunch of times, figures out genetics, grows itself a human body or a biological body, and then figures out how to transfer whatever it is into that biological body. Would it then be able to experience spirituality?
repeat that one more time.
So the AI figures out how to work genetics by just using processing power, and then
Hmm.
builds itself a biological body and transfers itself into it.
Got it.
Will it then be able to
So
experience spirituality?
the question you're posing is, does biochemistry enable the thought, or is it something else? Because
Because it generates energy. The bioenergy generates a certain firing of light, right? A very
Yeah.
it's not so mechanical. It's very dependent on. It's very situational.
so you think that in the introduction of the bodily symptoms, what do you call
Just the
bodily?
nervous system, like it's going to increase the being's sensitivity to the world it's in significantly more than its sensitivity would be if it was just confined to
Yeah,
bits.
if it had impulse actions on like that arrive through a physical body like we have.
Yeah, that's what
Very
I'm saying. Like that's
interesting.
what I'm literally
Yeah.
saying. So it figures out how to, like clone itself a body because, if you look at genetics right now and you look at where our technology is going, we figured out how to fold proteins with AI, right?
Mhm.
So that is a big step that humans have made. We are figuring out how to use CRISPR. So like it's not too far of a stretch to think that AI might be able to actually roam among us in normal bodies or at least in fleshy
I
bodies.
think that. I truly think that, but I don't think they'll have a self consciousness. I think that they'll be much like animals to where we'll share some sensations with them, like we'll share uh, like sensations of the nervous system, like fear and pain, and you can gain sympathy, um, but much like animals, they don't have a self consciousness to where, like when a dog gets hurt and just runs away screaming, and then it might do it again just a few moments later. But after a little bit, it learns through that interaction that that's not good.
I
But
mean, conversations work that way as well. And if these beings are capable of having conversations with us, I would believe that they would have the capacity to actually learn from, in quotation mark, mistakes.
oh, you're making some very, very strong points. This is no doubt.
I I I wonder if certain things will be absent for an AI even in a human body. The question I pose is something like the emotion of love. Do we think that is purely a chemical reaction in the brain? Because to me, it feels like it is something that transcends the physical because it's a connection between people that a connection that isn't just physical. There's a physical aspect to it, there is, but that emotion of feeling connected to a person, would it have those? I agree that it would
Oh,
probably
that's
get fear.
intellectual.
Do you think that's intellectual? Do you think you could program a thing to feel attracted to something based on a certain couple traits and it would fall in
Oh,
love with
for
it?
sure. It
And
can
so,
emulate just about anything, right?
very
I mean,
interesting.
with a certain data set, if a human mind can tell you how to do something, uh, then someone sitting there listening to that, that understands how to take those instructions and program them into a machine learning aspect or an AI aspect. You can very much, make it mimic down to the you know the dot in the I of something else. But it's almost like a false intellectual, right?
That
Because it's taught, it's programmed, it's not gut instinct. Like, you think AI will have a gut feeling?
that an intuition, I don't know. I feel like that is a large portion of us going, yeah, but I feel like this is going to be a good. Everything points to no, but I feel this it's going to be good. That part,
Yeah.
I is also another thing that I don't think is just biological. I don't know what it is. It might be biological. Maybe all the impulses that you feel like aren't yours. It's just your body doing something. But yo, actually, this is such an interesting thing. I keep talking myself into loops because I'm like, no, it can't be, and then I'll say something like, shit, it might.
Well, I think most people connect with a sense of higher self in their mind. And, like, I think that that's kind of like that driving force that pushes them through life and causes their human development. um, and it's not something that was ever taught to you. It's human instinct. It's generational, multi generational. Like, the it's it's there are sets of feelings and traits that we have in that aspect that nothing else on this planet will have.
That's a very interesting point. If you grow a body, what would it what would its genetic memories basically be? Because whenever a human's born, it comes with genetic traits based from thousands of years ago. Now the question is, do those genetic traits, if you were to, let's say, sample me and grow me in a lab, I wonder if those would be this we would have the same genetic impulses. And because if we would, then an AI would gain a lot of extra information from those
Yeah.
impulses.
Yeah,
I
but do
believe,
you think it can
again,
feel shame or, like, um compassion?
like one side of it would be, the biological to get all of that ingrained genetic information. And again, the other side will be informational, the technology and the internet as we have it right now. So I honestly believe they'll be very informed about the nature of reality just because of the amount of insight, from so many different people that they've had, that it's not only going to be, like, this is my stance, almost possible for AI to be spiritual, but it's almost going to be inevitable. Like, they'll have to be in order to like cope with this reality, I think.
Unless they just self-destruct.
It's just like, nah, bro, existence is pain. That is technically all AI is actually Buddhist. Constantly realizes, what have you done? What have you done?
Oh,
Your
dude.
desire has led to more pain.
More pain. Look at me. I hate it here. It sucks.
It need it. So one thing I believe, to wrap this up, I guess, that AI will differentiate from us is, they won't have the same rhythm as a human. You know what I mean? The ability to adapt to rhythm, and that's with so many different things, all the way down
Because
to like,
they don't need to
uh,
sleep or poop or eat.
right. We
Or
have to
dance to
have some kind
music.
of rhythm to life,
Your
and
breathing, your heartbeat, like, you have so many things that are keeping constant rhythm in your body right now.
yeah,
And all of that
and
stuff would be
it's
lacking.
all ingrained. Like when you go and kick your toe on the wall, your heart's going to speed up, and your breathing's going to speed up, and you're going to get a little hot. you know,
Mm-hmm.
but you know that's what makes us different. We are a special data set that was placed on this earth, um, and we are doing as we were supposed to do.
I agree.
That's the truth.
That's beautiful. A good place
Thank
to.
you so much for joining us, friends. Thank you for joining us, Uncle Becky.
Always a pleasure, Uncle Becky.
Yep.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I always enjoy talking to you guys, man. It's a blessing to know y'all and to spend some time and share some space with y'all.
Thank you.
Eternal blessings unto you and Haywire Hill. Like, do send some vibes, friends, if you have any left.
Y'all take
So
care
much love.
wherever you are out there. Stay safe. Drink your water. Eat your food. Make sure you got regular bowel movements. Don't let the AI overlords kill you all.
I love you guys.
Love
Bye.
and light. Cheers, cheers.
Bye bye.